This is Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is the August 23rd, 2022 meeting of the LaPorte County Plan Commission. You can find more information for this meeting at www.accesslaportecounty.org.
We're going to start the meeting, LaPorte County Plan Commission for August 23rd. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So coordinated. If you have any phones or not any pagers anymore, please put them silent. Unless emergency personnel. Roll call, please.
Tony Hendricks.
Here.
Adam Karanka.
Present.
Rita Beatty. Here. Earl Cunningham.
Present.
Rich Merzinski.
Present.
Harold Parker.
Present.
Earl Cunningham. Glenn Minnick.
Present.
John Carr.
Present. We have a quorum. Is there approval of the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second. Motion is second. Any addition, corrections, deletions, changes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Approval of minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve is presented.
Does that count for both sets of minutes, both special
sets of
minutes? Second.
Any changes, additions, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Petition number one, petitioner Erica Ruppke, represented by attorney Anthony Novak, Newby Lewis, Kaminsky, and Jones, was tabled from last meeting. Petitions the Planning Commission to vacate a public right-of-way road located adjacent to 5383 East Saginaw Trail, Rolling Prairie, Galena Township, zoned R1B. I presume the notice is still adequate since it's tabled. Do we need to have a motion to take it off the table?
Take it off the table.
Motion second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. The floor is yours, Mr. Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. So I won't waste too much of your time, but we were here last month on a petition to vacate. One of the things that was brought up by Commissioner Merzinski was the possibility, if ever there would be some sewer that could go back here in Rolling Prairie. And Mr. Cunningham proposed the question of if there was, would my client be willing to grant an easement? My client wasn't there at the time. Mr. Drecke is here tonight in person. And the answer is yes, absolutely. So I'm happy to go over what we're trying to do here, but we have a platted but undeveloped alleyway that we're requesting to be vacated with the condition that we will grant an easement to the county if ever there comes a time sewer would run in that alley. So here to answer questions, as is Eric.
Any questions from the board?
What if we wanted to run a road from Iroquois?
If you wanted to run a road through that alleyway?
Well, what if we did? That's what it was originally designed for. So you have, two houses at one end? The other end comes out down close to the lake. And a lot of undeveloped land there where somebody might want to put a house someday. Also, I think I asked last time, is that building still on the county's property?
Yeah, and I answered that last time. There is a structure that is there, and Eric could certainly speak to the history of it being there. I believe he bought it when it was there. I understand that you don't take kindly to land being there, but again, I can't change the facts there. And I don't believe the county has any plans to put a road in there, so I couldn't answer that.
Well, we've had this very same situation. It's prevalent in Hudson Lake and Saginaw Lake both, where people build structures on county property. And we have made people move their building. Seems to me a lot of that out there. I don't. We know it's not right, but if we let it go for one person, you know what I'm saying, how that ends up working. People need to know that you can't build something on the county's property. It's not your property. You're not paying taxes on it.
And I understand that. Mr. Eric can answer some questions, but again, factually, this isn't a situation where he knew this wasn't his property and he decided to build anyway. There was a long history here, and I know Eric's right there. Maybe he can give you a little bit of background.
2008, I came in the building plan to do a garage in the back that's there now.
Can you give us your name and address for the record?
Eric DeRicky, 5383 East Sagana Trail.
Thank you.
So we set it up with a 10-foot setback based upon the property that was there and stake set for it. So it was never intended to go on the county property edge or into it. That was 2008. 2014, I started working with Beacon Schneider, was able to see overhead views of properties for other projects. Went to check my property out and realized that it's right on the line. My back of my garage is right on the county road. Came in the building department immediately. I wasn't caught with this. I caught it. I brought it to the county and I said, here's what I've got going on. And they're like, well, there's a road behind your property. You could petition to vacate the road in 2014 in the fall. I hired a lawyer. We petitioned the county to vacate. We did mailings to everybody that lived along that road, and they were all sent out. And when they came back, the neighbors were calling me left and right, thinking they were going to lose their driveways. All this was a mess. So it just we just stopped it. Knowing that it was county road, I went through the county highway. I talked to them. If that road was ever going in, county highway said the road we're never putting the road in there. There's a wetlands there. There's a ravine to the left of my property. It is owned by the Homeowner Association of Saugony Lake. It was designated to be a park. It became a dump. And that's kind of where it is now. It's just nothing. So all intentions were to be off that county road. I didn't even know it was there. When I bought the property, I bought it in foreclosure. There was no survey. There was no formal survey. There was some old T-posts, and that's what I went on when the original garage was built. Now, the shed that you're calling into question is a temporary structure. I knew that it seemed like the road vacate wasn't going to be an issue, and this was in pre-COVID 18, getting ready to come back in to get this going again. Because I came into the county for another project, and they informed me that I didn't need to vacate the entire road, just the roadway behind my property. I was just trying to make my property legal and not put a bunch of structures all over it. And I want my stuff right. I want my, affairs in order with my land. That's why I was here, to get that straightened out in the county. The shed, I rolled it in from my neighbor's yard. I didn't build the shed. It's a temporary structure. It's on some fence posts. It's rolled into place. The neighbor of mine behind me, Tim Shields, had talked about taking the shed from me. It is on the county land. There's no doubt. And I built my property right up to the county road. And in 2008, it was a mistake on my part, but I tried to rectify the mistake. That's why we went through all this. So that's it.
Okay. Any questions other questions from the board?
Well, I'm with Commissioner Morzinski. I mean, I don't think we necessarily have to vacate this just because he made a mistake on his property. I mean, I foresee like he does. I mean, we could have services move in and we're going to need that right away, even if we don't put the road in. I mean, so why do it?
Okay. Anyone else? Attorney BG, do we need to go back open public comment again? Or we already did that?
It would only be on the discussion had tonight. They couldn't go back and revisit the will.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Any desire from the board?
And Mr. Hendricks, before you take a vote, if I could just add something, but I'll let you guys discuss though.
So one last question. So Beacon shows that the actual garage structure is over into the unimproved county property. Is there a surveyor's report to support that building is actually on the original plot of land? Owned by Mr. Durkee?
Yeah, he had served that last month.
Okay.
The ravine you're talking about to your west, how big is that?
It's quite deep. I mean, probably from, if my yard is 0, it's probably 15, 17 feet down.
Because it looks like it runs north and kind of in the other right of way.
There is a wetlands down there. We get snapping turtles that come up from the swamp into our backyard. I don't know what they had ever done. What plan? I had actually got with the homeowners association in Saugony Lake to purchase that. Oh, it was voted on. It was voted favorably to have it surveyed and appraised and sold. And then same deal. Some neighbors have questions, and then the president of the homeowners association said it wasn't worth going forward.
But there's a right of way all the way around that piece,
Very much.
but there's a ravine in it.
It is a ravine. It is, it's unbuildable. And if I would have purchased it, I would have made an agreement to have it unbuildable. My kids, I think technically we are deeded access to that land because it's almost as having access to the lake when you live in Saugony Lake. My kids go back there, they sled on the hills back there. It's right in our backyard.
Any other questions from the board? That's the pleasure of the board.
Question, we do have the minutes that we approved. Somebody point out to me what page number is here where we're talking about a road. I thought we left the last meeting sending Mr. Novak back to get permission from his client to have an easement for sewer. I don't see anything about a potential road when the county's already told him they're not building a road. So I'm looking at the minutes. Am I missing something here?
That's my impression too.
And just to add to you, that was my understanding that there was never a discussion last meeting that there could potentially be a road. It was brought up that there could potentially be sewer, and would my client be willing to put in allow sewer? And the answer is yes. So I didn't have any discussion about the potential of a county road because that was never discussed last month. And again, never an understanding that it was going to be there or something that was planned.
And I'm in favor of the easement. I want sewers in Saugony. I see the need for it. I know that the homes built out there were never intended to be permanent residences, most of them. And most of them have failing systems.
That was my question because I'm looking at the overhead and I think that it's a good concern. I think the county would build its road west to east and east to west to get to any lots that would be there, but there's another right of way that goes north that doesn't look like it would be fun at all to build a road on. Everyone's staying away from it. Looks wet.
Those roads are plotted 100 years ago.
Pleasure of the board.
I wasn't even aware it was
Mr.
there.
President, in light of the fact that we tabled this, sent it back to Mr. Novak to contact his owner, and he complied with that, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Any other questions? Harold? No? All right. Roll call.
Tony Hendricks,
Aye.
Rita Beatty,
Aye.
Adam Karanka,
Aye.
Glenn Minnick,
Nay.
John Carr,
Aye.
Harold Parker,
Aye.
Earl Cunningham,
Aye.
Rich Mrzinski.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Motion passed. Thank you, and please take care of the right of way so we have sewer line, because I know Commissioner Mrzinski is working on sewer line out there.
Yes, we are.
And redevelopment, awesome.
Thank you for taking care of the property.
Yeah. Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
Petition number 2, petitioners Rodney Allen, RLC, represented by Chris Willoughby, Brazy Nelson, and James, respectively, petitions the Plan Commission to rezone from R1B to B2, property located 2945 East State Road 2, LaPorte, Indiana, zoned R1B.
Notice adequate.
Notice is adequate. Floor is yours, Mr. Willoughby.
Good evening. I officially need glasses, so enough time has passed over the years that those will be on and off. So as Mr. Hendricks indicated here, on its face is what a simple petition for rezoning from R1B to a B2 designation. However, in saying that, recognize that it isn't, and by virtue of appearing at the audience tonight, there's some issues to discuss. My client owns a trucking company, and this property, to those that aren't familiar, used to be part of the Wilson Landscaping. There's still landscaping materials on this property. For all intents and purposes, it's been used for business purposes, business use, trucking in and out of there. And you will hear tonight, I'm certain, issues with regard to some concerns about previous use of the property, potential future use, and potentially misunderstanding as to what the true intention is. Ultimately, my client does own a trucking company. His intention is to build a pole barn / garage that he would be able to park some of his vehicles in for light maintenance. That's the crux of it. Not running a trucking company, not conducting a trucking business from this. 90% of his equipment, he has two main clients, and they're 2 miles each way. 90% of his trailers, equipment are at the client sites. So before I get to the legal requirements that you have to consider in order to, if you're inclined to grant this or deny it, that's where your decisions are based on. I think it's important that we understand the lay of the land, and we also understand that if you were inclined, you get to impose some conditions on there, some restrictions that might be applicable to this. I've talked to one neighboring, and he's not here, so I don't want to represent, take what I say with a grain of salt. He just didn't want a Flying J truck stop there. Well, nobody has that intention. There's a shed right now that's been delivered. It isn't set. We kind of have, this is a terrible joke, but it's not intended to be one. Put the brakes on any development because we're trying to, swing for the fences here and ask for the rezoning first, because that's what makes the playing field fair here. Everybody understands what can and can't be done. And if you were inclined, this isn't spot zoning. There are other B2 property and mixed uses up and down this area. There are other properties that certainly, and it's no slight to anybody else, but what's being considered or complained about on this property, drive in and around some of that vicinity, and there's a lot bigger concerns. My client intends to do things the right way, comply with the code. There were some issues, and so we can get ahead of those, and I ultimately want to reserve some time to speak in response to what I anticipate will be some remonstrances against our petition. But contrary to popular belief, communications, there aren't issues with the Army Corps of Engineers. My client's in compliance. There aren't issues with MS4. There are not issues other than what can we do based on your decisions tonight. We've had a meeting, some pre-planning with Mr. Poulin and his staff, with MS4, with Army Corps, and that's why we feel that we're in a position to be before you tonight to ask for the granting of this petition. So without going through all of them in detail, section 30.07 put forth your decision criteria, and you have to pay reasonable regard to the county land development plan, the current conditions, the desirable use, property values in and around the vicinity, responsible growth, environmental conditions, spot zoning, and neighborhood plan. All of those, my client is turning something that has somewhat been a dilapidated property into an income producing and improving that property. It's only going to increase the property values around there. We've addressed spot zoning because there are similar mixed uses in and around. Whether this should have been, when the code was redone, whether this should have really been R1B, is questionable. It was always an agricultural business, right? My client, the things that he could do there now, certainly with some consideration of this commission and any restrictions and discussions with neighbors, and it could be used for agricultural purposes. We can have livestock and horses there. We could have schools and group homes and much more traffic than might already be there. You know, there won't be many hours of the day that the owner will have trucks in and out of there, other than to do some occasional maintenance, fill up with fuel, and be on our way. If and when, you know, that's a discussion for another day. What we're here for today is to see, does this project fit? Does the contemplated use fit in this area? And we believe that it does. With that, unless there are specific questions, I would yield and would like the opportunity to address any concerns or questions that come up as a result of those that I anticipate want to speak.
Any questions from the board for Attorney Willoughby?
So, Mr. Willoughby, I'm looking at aerial photos from Beacon over the last couple of years, going back to 2020 and 2018. They also include this year's. If I look at 2022, there's a wetland that no longer exists. It's designated wetland based on the overlay. And in the previous photos, that pond existed. Now it is no longer there. You say that there isn't any issues with MS4 and Army Corps of Engineers. How so?
Well, we had a recent meeting. There's actually correspondence from the Army Corps that I believe has been submitted to Mr. Poulin's office. And so there were discussion, there was review. Army Corps was out there from some initial work and moving dirt around, for lack of a better description. But all of it, first of all, was any questions that the Army Corps had were minor. But that letter indicates that there are no current issues, and the property is in compliance, and it is well delineated what wetlands cannot be touched.
And Mike wanted to weigh in, but that is an isolated pond dug for the nursery, and there was no jurisdiction over that.
So that
pond.
that one was allowed to be
Yes.
reclaimed.
Yeah.
I did call. I called a special meeting with the landowner, legal counsels, MS4, and Army Corps to make sure that the other jurisdictional authorities, whatever was going on with that, were satisfied prior to them coming here tonight. So at that meeting, the Army Corps personnel, I believe it was Ryan Cassidy, he stated that he met with the client on site. They removed some fill from one of the wetlands, and that he had satisfied their concerns.
All right. Any other questions from the board? We'll open the floor up for demonstrators for or against the petition. Please come to the podium, name and address. I believe Alco's running for home viewers.
My name is Doug Newland. I live at 2992 North 300 East, Rolling Prairie, Indiana. And I have some information. Can I pass this out to you folks?
Yes,
They're
please.
just documentation.
Yes.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thanks for thinking of me.
Okay, so I'm not going to pretend to know what this all means better than you. I just want to point out a few things similar to decision criteria that I have listed there. And one of the things, I'd like to go to this zoning map. This is Kankakee Township zoning map, and the second page in has a little bit more of a close-up view. So the arrow there is the property in question. It's about 10 acres. There is a house on the property. The north of that property is also wetlands. Now, Rodney has a person living in that house, but as of right now, it's still part of this property. I understand he may try to sell the house at a later date, but I really don't feel like this person has any say in this, because that's not, it's still part of the property in question. So the next property down is Donnie Newland, and he's here. One thing I'd like to show you about this map, though, the business district that is on that side of the road, it doesn't really show all of this, but there's little Kankakee runs through there. There's also 3 more houses on that road before that business. So that business is 0.8 of a mile away. Pretty good distance, all houses through that whole area. Across the street you have, really it's all surrounded by wetlands. There's a house there. It was designed that Mr. Heafy originally put a business in there for his son. It's barely a 3-car garage that he ran an auto body out of for a long time. If you look at the green property going to the north up 300, once you get past the wetland there, that is all residential. There's houses on both sides of the road all the way up to State Road 20. So this clearly to me is a lot of residential properties there. And if you drop in a business right there, that's going to change. I feel that is spot zoning, if you ask me. That's my opinion. But I had a conversation with Rodney 2 years ago on my fence line as he was starting to make that road a little bigger. And his exact conversation to me was he planned on filling in that waterway. He was going to run a trucking business there, put a big barn up. He even made the comment that there would be semis lined up down 2 properties' fences, and he actually said it would probably decrease house value. That he told that directly to me. Anyway, what I'd like to show you is this road 300 is directly north and south. The primary winds of this region of the county come from the northwest, the west, and the southwest, pretty much most of the year. So I'm the property directly east on County Road 300. At the north of those 2 squares, I'm the north property. Mr. Collins is the south property. So if you look at the primary winds of this area, this is going to affect us greatly. And I'm going back to, let me go back to section B, current conditions, compatible with the conditions and character of current structures. If he puts a big building up here that he's going to service semis out of, this is a huge facility. There's nothing else in that area that even remotely comes close to that building. That's going to stand out. Nobody else has any type of buildings like that in that entire area. So if you go to desirable use, the land will not have an adverse effect on the surrounding land. And I know Mr. Collins is going to talk about the surrounding land, but I'd like to just go in a different direction here and say, what's it going to do to the surrounding properties, especially mine? If you look at that first picture that I have listed there, it's black. That's a brand new black Camaro that I bought in March of last year. Look at the dust and debris on top of it. That's not that is not problem with the photo. That is actual dust and debris on that vehicle. If you look at the picture after that, shows a fence line. That is my northernmost fence line. You see the dust. The road that's put in there is right butting up to my fence, and this is what we see. So whatever direction the wind's coming from, if it's coming out of the west right here, the lady across the street's going to get that dust. If it's coming out of the north or northwest, that's me. So this is clearly going to disturb these properties. The next page is a blank page. It's just a statement. I had somebody stop by my house earlier this year. It was coming out of winter, and Rodney was back there burning some stuff, and the winds was so strong out of the west that the smoke traveled between both of our houses, and basically I'm in my driveway talking to somebody in a truck. We could barely stand there with the smoke and the ash and the soot. Now what all this means is everything that he does over there is affecting 3 properties continuously because of our winds. Even if we get a strong north wind, it's going to affect the property to the south. So another thing that I would like to show is the road. This next set of pictures, they're side-by-side pictures. There is the road. 300, the right picture is 300 east going directly north. That shows the entrance and exit to the left of this property. Now look at the debris on the road there. These are sizable rocks. I mean, these are huge. And then the left picture is when he pulls out, he goes up to Highway 2, and then that's all these rocks too. This is at the edge of my driveway. I pull out of my driveway and do I got to go clean this up? This is serious. Everything I'll be honest with you, I haven't opened my windows in 2 years because of the construction and dust going on back there. I have to live in a shell basically. If you look at those last 2 pictures, of the beacon views. This is from 2020. Look at my property. Look at the wetland to the north. There was a pond in the back. There was nothing there. Look at the tree lines. There's tree lines everywhere. This property was owned by Darrell Wilson, and from the time that I moved in there in 1995, his mother-in-law lived there. There was no activity on that property until she died. Then Eric Wilson moved in and tried to run a little bit of a nursery out of the house, but he didn't change any zoning. And so this is the property. Now look at the next page, the last page. Look at the activity from 2 years. He's got buildings in there, trucks in there. My concern is this meeting should have happened 2 years ago. Should it not? Shouldn't you buy a property and check the zoning and change it? But this gentleman was going to open this business. I want to leave you with this. He was going to open this business without your permission. He was going to do it anyway. And as far as Army Corps goes, he started filling in that waterway from day one. The first time I met this guy, he backed a dump truck up in 2019 right to the edge of 300 and dumped a load of stuff in that waterway. I went up to the truck. Donnie was there, my brother. I went up to the truck and said, hey, you can't dump there. That's protected. And he said, I know what I'm doing. I'm planning on buying the property. Day one, 2019, starting to fill in a wetland. I called Army Corps of Engineers on it back in 2020 because he just kept filling and filling and filling. It took 2 years for Army Corps to tell him to stop and to bring it back out. And it's basically, I've been talking to Mr. Poland for a year and a half too to try to get this activity rectified to where he's got to follow the ordinances of the area. I do. If I got to follow the ordinances, that's what we're supposed to do as living out in the county. If I want to build a pole barn, I got to go down and get a permit before I build it. So I want to leave you with that. I know what these gentlemen are saying at this particular point, but there's a lot more to this story than what's been presented so far. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other demonstrators for or against the petition? Come to the microphone, name, address. Yes.
I just have a few pictures I'd like to hand out.
This is pretty. She did a hell of a job. There's a big difference between these two pictures.
You can see on the first page and follow through. And then I'm gonna kind of just go a little bit more than what Mr. Newland has done. And
That's kind of staggering. This picture to that picture. That's all ridiculous.
Dennis Collins. My address is 3002 North, 300 East Rolling Prairie. And I'm just going to read some things that I have down, and I'll read them kind of like verbatim. But I just want to say I am completely against this zoning change to B2. I got front row seats to the transition of this property. I can see everything that's went on, the changes, and I can see no benefit to the residents here, the habitat or the community. Now, if we look, let me start off here, the desirable use. According to section C of the decision criteria, the current shifts and inclusion of rock, gravel, dirt have had a detrimental impact on the land. For example, air quality. From the constant dust, toxic fumes from running semi-tractors and earth-moving vehicles, and the possible toxic fluid leak contamination to the land and water from said vehicles. This is not taking into consideration the impact on the wildlife and habitat in this area of LaPorte County. If the land was considered desirable for this business adventure, then why all the gravel and why fill up a pond and the wetland? LaPorte County has an ordinance that says you need to be 50 feet back from that wetland, which I know he's already supposedly moved this dirt back, which is said, but I encourage that extra 50 foot be put into place too. And also, the wetland be to its previous state and the former sanctity of the area for the wildlife. It'll take years for this to recover, for what to fill. And now the property values was section D in there. We talked about property values there. It's not going to increase our property values. According to Section D, this business should not be injurious or detrimental to the surrounding property values. In this case, it's detrimental. The constant movement at this beginning stage of planning of semi-tractors and earth-moving vehicles has resulted in piles of dirt, there's rocks, clouds of dust, noise of engines running, and the beepings of back and forth required for the staging of gravel, of rock and dirt, which there is rock and dirt staged there. It's an unnecessary nuisance that would deter potential buyers. This is not including the current building that is illegally placed on the property and the fleet of equipment parked all over, which as you look in the pictures, you'll see the whole fleet, quite a bit of it. In regards to the property value, I have an all-season room. Before the stripping of the trees, natural noise barriers on the property, I would have the windows open to enjoy the breeze and the calm view of the area surrounding the property. Now I'm unable to enjoy that space. In the event that I ever choose to sell, this room would be a selling point to potential buyers. This is no longer the case due to the trucks, trailers, gravel, and barren land that surrounds my home. While steps can be taken to mitigate the dust and noise barriers, there is still a factor of constant noise and displeasing outdoor aesthetics that Mr. Allen has created. Man-made noise barriers cannot replace the mature trees that were removed. Those trees were a natural barrier and played a valuable role in the air quality of the land. I cannot see how this would help the property values of this area. There will be more equipment, more dust, more noise, and constant movement of vehicles on this property. And if you look at the pictures, you can see the dust and the backside of my house of all the dirt on it. Now, I'll go to responsible growth. According to Section E, the addition of this business should promote for orderly and responsible community growth and development. Residents in a R1B zone expect an established residential area and suitable environment for family life. I cannot see that being able to happen if Mr. Allen is granted permission to change the zoning. This is an established residential area that spans generation. My family's been in that house since '75. There's been a Collins in there, and I know the Newlands and all, they've been there for a long time too. The dust from all the gravel put on this property is overwhelming. The current status and unapproved changes made to this property have already had an adverse effect on the community. Waking up the beeping of moving machines. Wind, as Mr. Newland said, from the southwest and northwest carry diesel fumes into the house, and the back of the house is filthy from dirt. This in addition to the increased asthma problems my wife is having for the last 1.5 to 2 years. She definitely is using her inhaler a lot more. And I know the woman across the road was talking about that too, of her asthma problems. And then I'll skip up here, I'll go to Section F. The environmental conditions should be suitable for proposed use. The environmental conditions of this area are suitable for residential homes and living. My family conserves energy and our carbon output by hanging out laundry during warmer months. This benefits communities because of the reduced energy from the dryer and and the reduced need for the air conditioners for the run. But we have to run it most of the time now for the dirt. And I have to kind of, when I do laundry, I'm going in and out trying to fight when a truck's going to come through. Due to the constant movement of the land, we have to. Okay, I'm sorry. Before Mr. Allen's action sends clouds of dust past our homes, the air quality is severely impacted. If this air quality is impacting us, then it's also impacting the surrounding natural habitat. The next point is regarding environmental condition relates potential spills of fluids from running in parked trucks and trailers. The toxic fluids are washed through the gravel into the water supplies because there is not proper drainage in place to mitigate such fluid. Now we have, in this area, we all have wells, and I have a garden. One good spill and we're in trouble. My last point relates to the natural gas line. There's a natural gas line that runs through that property. And over there on the side through the ditch, the natural gas line runs across the side of that property to that ditch. And there's also a the sewer line from Rolling Prairie runs down through that ditch. So both are not suitable, I would think, for constant traffic. And lastly, what I would say, I implore you, do not change the zoning of this property. Mr. Allen, through his actions, has not proven to have the best interests of the land, the habitat, or the community. He is not a resident of the property, and thus has less investment in the preservation of the area we call home, and an area our family has called home for generations. I want to thank you for your time and listening to me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other remonstrators for or against the petition?
I never view things. I just don't. My name is Robert Scott. I live on 3201 North, 300 East. It's about 2 houses away, and it's just been terrible there. And I always worry about. That's the headwaters of the Little Kankakee River. They go right through there, goes across my property, into the wetlands, which borders his property, and then goes into a ditch, meets up with the other part of the Little Kankakee River, goes right in there. And that has always been just beautiful with wildlife, geese, ducks, turtles, everything in there. And I have noticed a lot of less activity out there way, less deer, less turkeys. The main thing though is just it's not been a very good experience for me dealing with this. So I ask that you don't approve it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other remonstrators for or against the petition?
Tony, at this point,
Right, one more.
excuse me. Tony, at this point, I want to make mention of 2 letters that were provided by the building department just moments before the meeting. These are common letters between 2 notified neighbors. Mr. Bijou, do I need to read these since they were not provided to the full board?
Just provide the context because they're of record.
All right. So both of these are remonstrance against noting things of constant noise, increased traffic, dust flying around, and other similar conditions as reported by the remonstrance in person.
My name's Don Newland. I got the property straight west of the property, and the dust and everything that's coming up through the properties, and plus the stop and assist orders that the county has put against him. Instead of going out through my brother's property, now he's going through my property and messing up my blacktop, my yard. And one other comment I have to say is he don't even own the property yet. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other remonstrators for or against the petition? Floor is open. Any other remonstrators for or against the petition? Seeing none on Zoom, no more remonstrators for or against the petition. Public comments closed. Comments from the board, discussion. Oh, we'll leave the floor back open to Attorney Willoughby.
Okay, just a couple points of clarification, and again, as I indicated at the outset, those aren't any light considerations. In fact, the zoning probably gives the ability to control some of those things, because a lot of the things that were discussed and the concerns, dust, gravel, they can happen regardless of whether you grant this petition. They can have agricultural uses. They can have farm machinery there. There can be the potential. They're assuming the worst, and I understand that. We understand that. That again, that's why we don't take lightly. I know that you're not going to take lightly the concerns. But by granting this petition and the ability to discuss, and my client has attempted to discuss with one or more that spoke tonight and stonewalled. No interest in talking, no compromise, no ability to say, hey, what might help the process here? What might be palatable? My client has tried to do that. But some of these concerns are not as they portray them, because they're going to be concerns regardless. They're going to be concerns because of the way that it's used, the way that it has been used. Now, the issue is, by granting this, do you have some control over this? And does everybody have the ability to control this, including the neighbors, with some conditions that, but for you granting that and putting some conditions out there, for instance, they couldn't control most of the concerns they talked about tonight. I do think there's a misrepresentation, not intentionally, about the flow of the water. That water flows east there. It's not flowing towards the property that was represented to you. My client, the representation, he doesn't own it. My client is a contract owner of that property. It's privately financed by a contract. That's an equitable interest, but that's my job, right? I get to legally interpret. So if somebody's saying that property, he doesn't own it, he does own it. It's just subject to a private financer. We call it a land contract. Concerns about the access. My client's still subject to a lot of process here. Even assuming that you were going to be inclined, we have to get by some commissioners too. My client has to comply with the building code and the zoning requirements in general. And if there's anything that would stray from what is being asked of you or inside the code, then there's more process, because they'd have to seek variances. There are compliance issues, but there's nothing that's before you to show that our client, other than a building, which we've discussed, and again, the brakes were put on that. The building department addressed that, because we tried as a group to plan what's the best approach here. How do we get control of this? Try to get some orderliness between neighbors, and maybe that's not going to be the case. But my client has been open, over the last 3 years. There's discussion about how much work's there. Well, guess what? There is going to be equipment moved and dust from construction and equipment moving gravel and dirt and those things, prepping the property. However, that's not going to be there all the time. Over the last 3 years, they've probably been there approximately 160 hours total. Going forward, there's only a couple hours at most a day that property would even be used. So the concerns, and where I'm going with this, is not that my client wants to be limited in how it's used, but willing and recognizing what the situation is. And again, I do emphasize that big concerns. We obviously have some personality conflicts here, and nobody has slung mud, and so we're going to continue down that path tonight. The issue is, how do we do that? And we truly do think, in addition to being self-serving and wanting this petition, is that your ability to control, and everybody's best opportunity to control what goes on that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of things. I believe in the packet there was a survey by my firm that we did do a boundary. So full disclosure, we are not working with the petitioner, but we did a boundary a while ago. So we're not involved in this any way possibly. But one thing I want to note for everyone in the room, and Mike and Doug can look into this. This was a pre-existing landscaping operation. So there are things he could still do with that. Not saying trucking company, but there are things he can do on this site as a pre-existing condition prior to grandfathered in.
Well, my question back would be, was that use ever discontinued? Because if it was discontinued, the grandfather goes away.
Not that I'm going to vote either way, but I'm looking at that and I remember that site, Wilson's Landscaping, and they used it. And they had a pond, and they fed trees, and they dug trees, and not to the intensity it's used today, but that was my question. As long as he didn't stop the use, he could keep doing that under our code.
Correct.
One thing I would like to add, as far as the excavating and moving dirt and the prepping, that is not something that my department was able to stop, because we do not regulate flat work and excavation. So as far as the air quality and the dust, I was not able to address that. I was made aware of that by their legal counsel when I issued the first stop work order for the building that was put out there. But we addressed all of the other issues that were in our jurisdictional authority. We met with them and the other jurisdictional agencies that were involved. We got compliance with the wetlands and MS4. We agreed to stay action on the building until the ruling from this board, and we've been withering this down until here we are at this hearing tonight. Should this board decide to make a favorable ruling on this, I would have conditions that I would ask be put in that.
On the B2 zoning, is that, I'm looking at the schedule of uses, and B2 doesn't look like it allows much of what they're asking for.
Tony, if I may, I have the description for B2 up, and out of the joint zoning ordinance, it says the district is generally characterized by an integrated cluster of establishments serviced by a common parking area and generating a large volume of vehicular and pedestrian traffic. The intent of the district is also to encourage the concentration of regional business areas to the mutual advantage of both the consumers and merchants, and thereby to promote the best use of land at certain strategic locations and avoid encouraging marginal strip business development along major streets.
I'm looking at the schedule of uses, and B2 is, Mitch can help us too. B2 is special exception for truck rentals. I mean, there's a lot of special exception and not that much permitted. Yeah, B2 is not general commercial. Well, Commissioner Mrazinski, leaving the floor to you.
Yeah, I've been kind of waiting to talk about this for a while. I've been following this situation for a couple of years. I've been out there a lot, talked to the neighbors a lot. I think this zoning thing is something that should have come up a couple of years ago before we started running an illegal business. And I don't understand, first of all, maybe you can explain to me, I know that the Army Corps had ordered him to stop filling on a wetland, but now that it's okay, I don't understand how that's the first thing, how did that happen? Because he's filled it in, obviously. And it's a wetland. I've dealt with wetlands with the RDC. I can't understand how the IDEM would let that go by.
Yeah, so their representative appeared at the meeting that I called, and between my last communication with the petitioner and the Army Corps, he had started working with them, communicating with them, let them come on site, let them perform an inspection. They determined there was a certain amount of fill that they wanted removed. I can't recall off the top of my head how much it was, but they agreed and that amount of fill was removed, and they reported to us at that meeting that they were satisfied with their portion of it, at least.
Can I add a detail to that too?
Sure.
It seems like there might be confusion and maybe not there's a man-made lake there in addition to the wetlands, and there was no dispute with regard to, or the pond, there was no dispute with regard to that. There was an issue, and it wasn't much. So again, as indicated in that letter, the Army Corps, and again, I know it is surprising to get clearance and it not to be an issue, but that letter is there. But I just want to make sure that we're not confusing that pond that filled in, not a dispute at all, versus the wetlands and disturbance of that.
My concern was it was a similar situation where somebody filled in a wetland, and the way we figured it out was when all the neighbors downstream were getting flooded because it shut off the normal flow of drainage. So I don't know how that's going to. It's been pretty dry this year, and how that was going to turn out. But I know to me it was concerning that they were allowed to fill in a wetland. There's some buildings on there. Do any of these buildings have permits?
There was one building that was delivered to the site without a permit. We red tagged that, and when we were in the meeting with Army Corps, MS4, legal counsels, we made an agreement to stay further action on that until the ruling from this board.
Yeah, I had conversation with the building inspector, and that was one of the first concerns I had, was that when he went on the property that Mr. Allen got pretty surly with him, and also with some of his neighbors. That doesn't help your case, sir, at all. When you move into a neighborhood with an illegal business. You've got a mailbox out there, so you're doing business. You got people to show up in the morning, get their trucks and go to work hauling stuff in and out. That's a business in a residential area, and that's not permitted. You've got, you pretty much ignored a lot of authority here when they've tried to talk to you over the last couple of years. That doesn't bode well for your case either, sir. This is the kind of things that come up that make our job, just, to me, make it just a little bit easier, where it's not a case of, well, is it right or wrong with like the previous case, but this is a lot of wrong. It's a lot of wrong from somebody that just thinks that they can ignore authority and do whatever they want to do. And the neighbors are the benefactors of all of the things going on. I don't know of anybody that would like that, to have a business stuck in your backyard and get ripping the trees out, filling in a wetland, and you've got an illegal road and an illegal business. I don't see any justification whatsoever to let this continue. In fact, I'd like to know from legal, could he be made to put this stuff back where that is not legal?
Well, if there's no permit on the building, that could be ordered removed. But it's legal for him to take trees down and grade the land.
Roadway?
What's that?
The roadway coming in?
No, I don't know if is that driveway permitted?
What?
The driveway, I believe that was put in by NIPSCO. I believe that was put in by NIPSCO or some utility company. I know he's done work to it since then, but that.
Yeah, that's big rocks. I just wondered what. Yeah, like I said, the neighbors, trucks going in and out, they're going to get the rocks strung into their yard and into the road. That's not good for anybody.
Any other questions from the board? That's a pleasure of the board.
Motion to deny the request.
Second.
Motion is 2 seconds to deny. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's denied.
Thank you.
Again, what did I do with my agenda? Oh, here we go. Here you go.
Everybody voted.
Any old business?
Get the resolution on the agenda.
There's a resolution to establish electronic means of communication, which we hope at the present time in the world we live that this might be ending soon. Right?
Well, this
The governor.
resolution was done by the governor. It was adopted by the Board of Commissioners. I believe the council also adopted this. I'm not sure if they did, but I believe they did.
Yep.
So I would, unless somebody's got an opposition to it, I would make a motion that we adopt it the same as the commissioners and the council did.
If you want to vote over Zoom, you need to adopt it.
Right. You can Zoom, turn away, not have to show up for the next.
Right.
You can Zoom, but your vote not going to count.
Yeah, and the resolution contains all the rules that the legislature set out, but you have to adopt this if you want to vote by Zoom.
This resolution follows the governor's executive order.
Motion
To approve.
There you go. We got a motion.
Second.
We got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Then we have an item from the council, a Meadowview discussion. Little update on Meadowview is, I believe the control has been done. They have the pipes and they are beginning construction. 10 days. So, Mike.
All right, I'll start out on this. When I appeared before the council at budget hearings, you expect to be grilled at budget hearings. That's the one time a year where they got you. So they focused a lot of the questioning on Meadowview, and they're like, why were permits issued to build out there, and what can you do now that we know what the situation is out there to prevent any further flooding or property damage? So my response to them was, I reviewed the prior commissioner's issuance of building permits, and this goes back to Commissioner Jim Blint. So this is a while ago. Maybe Commissioner Hamilton also maybe had a couple, but I did not find any errors in the issuance of those building permits. The only soil boring reports that are required are from the health department, and they are for septic systems. So we don't have anything to do with that in the building department, and we look at the structures. So there was no errors by my predecessors in issuing those permits. But now that we know that this is a problem, and there's 4 lots remaining out there, what are we going to do about it? And that was presented to me by the council. Earl was there at that meeting, so maybe he wants to jump in and add a little bit to that, and we'll have some discussion on it.
I think you've accurately. Microphone. I believe you have accurately reflected the concerns of the council. Are we going to complicate it by giving building permits to 4 more lots that may have the same problem?
Well, I think I want to remind the board that you can't simply deny a building permit. That's an unconstitutional taking of property. Okay, so you cannot arbitrarily say no. I think this issue will disappear eventually someday as these old subdivisions disappear, because now we have engineering requirements and everything else before a subdivision comes in, as you see with these requests. But this is a slippery slope. Although I think the council person's concerns are not unwarranted, the remedy cannot be not allowing the issuance of a building.
You issue a building permit without a basement.
Again, you're taking property. What basis do you have that they can't have a basement? Because they've had other drainage issues out there. Now, I think you could do a disclosure. Okay, just like we do.
I think you could deny, this is my personal opinion, I think you can deny the basement, let them take us to court, and have the court say, you've got to let them put the basement.
Well,
take
we can certainly do that. I'm supposed to give you advice to keep you out of court.
Right, take the responsibility off the county of allowing another basement that might flood. I mean, we're in an area where we know some of them are flooding.
Well,
not all of them. There are some people out there that say, I've never had any flooding, correct?
Yes.
But let's be clear, the county's voluntarily engaged in this process. The county's not legally bound to fix these problems for these people. Okay? Somebody has a wet basement, it's not the county's problem.
I would like to jump in and add, now, there are people with wet basements all over the county.
Absolutely.
Normally, those are isolated problems. The county doesn't get involved in it. Buyer beware. This Meadowview situation is a very unique situation, and in which 27 or more homes in one subdivision were inundated with subterranean water. And this was not by any failure by the surface water management system. That is functioning adequately. It performs as it should. This is subterranean water coming up. It's a unique situation. I don't know that it's ever happened before or since in any other subdivision. Sure, we've had surface water issues where people fill in ditches, they fill in swales, someone fills in a retention pond and builds a home there. Yeah, that causes problems. This is not that. This is separate and unique from that. So I do share the concerns of our council on denying a permit. Now, I've instructed staff that anyone that would apply for a permit out there, that it goes to me directly, and I'll handle it personally, because I want them to know what they're getting into. I like the idea of the disclosure. We already have a written form that we produce to people when they are moving from the city into ag zoning for residential use. Why couldn't we do something similar? That's kind of where where I'm leaning and what I would suggest. But this was recommended to me by the council to bring that up in this commission for discussion and to see if we could take any possible action on it.
I think we should maybe add it to the next agenda meeting, but at that point maybe, and I'm some sort of people like me and Mike and Doug maybe it's another member. I think we need full disclosure here. I think we need, if somebody comes to Mike's office for this area, and maybe for any area, they need to know, building commissioner needs to see their soil borings as their water table or water indicators and need to attach that to permit. When they're building their building and they're digging the foundation of the basement, it needs to be documented that, hey, we saw water indicators or water table, and you were notified, and the homeowner knew that and signed, yes, I saw it. I saw that. I was aware that my basement's in a water table or water indicators. Because when they're digging these foundations, they see that. And there were some people in Meadowview late in the game that knew their soil boring showed water indicators. And I think at a minimum, we get full disclosure, and the builder and the homeowner acknowledge that they know. So when they come back to the council and the commissioners, like, it's not something new. It's not like you didn't know. So don't come crying to us for another mill 5, because every one of you who built your home or in your real estate disclosure through the building permit saw that you knew when you built this. It went from the septic to the building department to the excavator, the inspections, that you guys saw something in there. We're not telling them no, we're just telling them you are aware and we are aware. We don't need this happening again for anyone in a subdivision.
I agree. And I would add that when they do a soil boring report for the health department for the viability of a septic system, they don't go down more than 5 feet, and they use hand tools. So if you're going to put a 9-foot basement in and you get a 5-foot soil boring report, that's not going to cut it.
But when they're building these, they see, and your guys inspecting footings, we see.
Can they do a deeper soil boring?
Yeah, you get
Not with hand
tools,
equipment.
It's expensive.
But
Would that be a requirement?
that, I don't know. That's a good question, and that's why I'm glad that legal comes.
It's possible, but we'd have to have it draft an entire set of regulations, and we'd have to hire somebody to help us draft those regulations.
You would add about $1,500 to $2,000 for every home.
Yeah, we'd essentially add a section, I guess we'd have to add a section of the zoning code or enter a standalone ordinance.
I'm not saying we do it for every home that's built in LaPorte County.
You have to. You can't just single out a subdivision. If we're going to do it, it's got to go down across the board.
$1.5 million on this subdivision to fix a water problem, and we can't require a new builder to have a 10-foot soil boring?
I didn't say that. I said we have to have regulations, but you can't pick and choose who and where. It's got to be fair across the board for everybody. Otherwise, it's unconstitutional.
That's why people hate government, because that's stupid. You're building on a hill 50 feet up in the air, and you got to have a 10-foot soil boring as compared to a subdivision that's already flooded.
No, I'm saying it all has to be checked, okay? But if we could put some limitations on the regulations, yes. But what I'm saying is everything has to be checked the same way for everyone.
It's tough, Earl, because even on the summit, there are veins of water running through that, and they are 100 feet above a water table.
And I want to remind Mr. Cunningham, the county chose to spend the money to remedy this, and I'm not criticizing what the county's choice was, but the county didn't have a legal obligation to do it. They did it because it was the right thing to do. Okay, and new subdivisions, it's not an issue anymore, because all that's engineered in at Plat Committee before it ever gets here. So this is only the older subdivisions. It can be done, but it's got to be done a certain way.
So, given, go ahead.
And I think it's important that this board direct our attorney to get with whoever is necessary to make sure that we don't build 4 additional homes in that subdivision with basements that we later have to rectify. What do we have to do to make sure that doesn't happen?
So what I've done so far, like I said, is I've instructed staff, if there's any applications for building permits for those remaining 4 lots, do not issue them. They come directly to me. I'll handle them personally. But I think disclosure is one way to go.
Can we have a disclaimer? A hold harmless?
Yeah, that's what I was going to recommend. Hold harmless disclaimer.
We do it in the drainage board all the time.
And the other thing I was gonna say, Rick McVeigh, the ex-county surveyor or engineer, he came in office. He works now for Structure Point, and we had a discussion about many things. And that subdivision came up, and there was like 6 lots that he mentioned that he wrote a letter to Ray Hamilton back in 06.
Don't look at
Or
Reader.
2006. Yeah, whatever. 1906. But anyways, stating there was an area of the plat that said there was like 4 to 6 homes that should not be built on, and that was because of a seasonal high water table. So he said that it should be in the building commission record, but he don't know where, and that it's in the archive in the county highway. So I could look for that, but
At least 1 or 2 of those owners knew that they had high water table, and they put a basement in anyways.
yeah, what was interesting, Rick McVeigh said it was listed on the plat. There were like 4 to 6 delineated homes or lots, and it basically said right on there, do not build or cannot build for the reason. And you guys never found anything like that in the building commission?
But maybe we bring this back to the plan commission next month, and
It was just odd that he brought
at minimum
that, he brought that to me.
disclosure, maximum disclaimer, hold harmless. That hey guys, when you come back to us,
I was
you knew. I mean, there's homes right now. We know. Mike knows it. There's homes right now being built, basements, 9-foot pour, and water table, and they know, and they're gonna have pumps. They know it. They're doing it right now.
And like our attorney says, we're not in Russia or China. We can't tell them they can't do it. And if we handle this, depending on how we handle this, it's going to be more work, more legality, and more money.
We just don't want to hear we didn't know.
Right. And we don't want to institute something for like 4 lots that's going to affect every single residence in the whole county. However, this is a problem. It needs to be discussed, and we need to do something.
So as I listen to all this,
South too, that's got the high water tables, you want at least a 10-foot. Not a bad idea to have a 10-foot boring.
See, the problem isn't the boring; it's the report that has to come along with it. Because a well driller can do a boring, but they can't write a report like a soil scientist and tell you at each 4 or 5 inches what this is. Is it high water table? Is it water indicators? That's where the cost comes. And these reports are 20 pages deep. These are huge. As soil scientists, professional.
so as I sit and listen to this, it reminds me of stuff in my personal life. I regularly have to sign a waiver of responsibility. And what keeps us to that hold harmless statement attached to these 4 lots in the plat book?
The other thing that I just now pulled up the subdivision to try to see, and right now I can only see 3 lots that are vacant.
Yep.
And they're currently owned by the same owner. So is there any way to maybe possibly meet with that current owner and ask for a deed restriction on it that says no basement allowed on that particular, because you could do a deed restriction which would restrict then that particular parcel to not allow a basement.
And I might add, the county should have done this, and I'm going to say this out loud in front of everyone. Before they spent the money, you had leverage to get this done. And now we're trying to do it after we spend the money.
I think
which
the
LaPorte
homeowner-
County does
I think
all
the
the
homeowner would be
time.
fine.
Yeah, but that, I mean, that might be an option. It keeps them where it's still sellable, it's still a marketable lot, but these just have a deed restriction that say no basement.
The landlords offered those to the county if they want to buy them at a reduced price.
If he likes that idea,
you like it.
I like it.
Well, it can't hurt to sit down with the owner, see if they'll agree to something, if we're concerned about these 3 lots.
And it's very.
We can still talk about what we're going to do across the board for the rest of the county. I don't have a solution right now, but we might be able to remedy these 3 lots with the meeting.
That might be a simple solution.
Yep.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Good idea. Any other discussion on it?
This out for the board because we do have a meeting set up for. Planning Commission has called for a meeting with some question about regulations, cars and dilapidated buildings and so forth. A lot of criticism of the county right now because of what Dermody's doing in LaPorte City. people say every day, if Normandy can go in and get a property condemned and tear it down, why can't the county? And that's, it's a little different situation with cities. I understand that. But my most recent viewing of a property, I'd like for any of you guys that are out in the area to take a look at the corner of Hamilton Street at the northeast corner of Wellsboro and Long Lane. There used to be a gas station sit there. They got a notice from the Plan Commission to clean up the property because trees were growing out of the building almost. So their solution was they just cut the trees down and left the brush laying on the lot. And I think I would venture there's at least 14 cars, maybe 16 vehicles hidden in the brush on that property, outside of the buildings. Now, there's raccoons coming and going to buildings and birds coming and going to buildings. But sitting outside of the building on a corner lot in a busy neighborhood, there's 14 to 16 vehicles.
Well,
most of them don't have engines or tires. They're just shells.
Talk to the sheriff. Or, unless the commissioners want to change the junk vehicle ordinance, the Plan Commission right now, as it sits, there's nothing he can do about junk cars. It's the sheriff.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where we have to get together with, bad news there is.
A lot of time on
said for the last couple of years, just that ordinance that we already have that states that the sheriff is responsible, just add the building commissioner. Because you've got inspectors that, what the sheriff's telling me, I don't have enough people to go look at it and then make sure I'm going to be back. If I tag it, that I'm going to be the same guy, go back in 2 weeks, that where you guys would have that. And to me, that would be just one little thing, so we don't get crazy, to add to the ordinance, the existing ordinance, where it says that the sheriff's responsibility, the sheriff and the building commissioner. Then we can go, because there's junk cars all over the place.
Well, I think that amendment would be a commissioner amendment. It would not be a Plan Commission amendment.
All right, then.
Make it happen.
I'll dig it up tomorrow.
We do have a code enforcement committee meeting coming up August 31st. We started meeting about a year ago. And right now, the county's code enforcement is fragmented. So you have tall grass and unkept yards and whatnot are the responsibility of the township trustees. They're part-time. They have limited resources. They don't really, they call me, So we're helping out with that, and we're helping out with the junk cars, and it's kind of a shared effort. But we're just doing this on our own. We don't really have a specific ordinance giving us this jurisdictional authority. So I can nag people with letters and inspectors and phone calls and talk to them. And I'm having like 40+% success in getting some of those cleaned up by using those methods. But you have other sites where they're indigent. They're elderly, there's medical issues, there's financial issues. There are reasons preventing them from cleaning it up. And even if we had the teeth in the ordinance, I could fine them until the cows come home, and it's not going to make a difference. So, and that's a wide swath of what we're dealing with since I took this on. So we really need to think about how we're going to deal with those too. Now, I suggested, there's other counties that have passed code enforcement ordinances. St. Joe County was the most recent one. So familiarizing ourselves with that, the funding that it takes. I think theirs was split into 3 separate ordinances, but it's all being run by the same department. Taking a look at that, it gives some teeth, but I didn't even see in their ordinance how it addressed properties where they were not financially able to clean it up. Now, when we talked about this in committee, we thought, well, we could maybe create a fund that is used to clean up the problem sites where the owners can't do it, and then perhaps a lien is placed so that those efforts are recoverable upon the sale of said property.
I want to chime in on that, because there's a big misnomer with the county council people I've talked to that the condemnation funds themselves. They do not. We place the lien on, and we can put it on the tax bill. But if that goes to tax sale and then commissioner sale, poof, the lien's gone. And so that effort still needs to be funded, and it has not been for years, because I think people have the misnomer that the county actually gets the demolition money back on every house, and it does not. It does not. So.
In most municipalities, that's true, right? Demolition costs are expensive, and typically they don't come back.
Right. And so there's no more money coming into the fund. We'll get paid on a lien every once in a while, but not often. These properties are not in good shape. A lot of them end up on the tax sale rolls and they subsequently at the commissioner's sale. And the law is that lien disappears when it's sold at commissioner's sale, and there's nobody's put any more funding in to do it. We used to do a lot more than we used to, but you got paid for it.
On the opposite side of the coin, the county owns several properties, maybe 100 properties within the city limits of Michigan City. And I've asked Mr. Schultz to give me a list of that, because as a county, we can't be critical of people for not cleaning up their properties when we're not taking care of our properties in the city limits of Michigan City. They're sending vector control out and putting a lien on the properties the county owns. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean,
I think I said a couple of years ago when we talked about that, we should just relinquish all of them, give them all to Michigan City.
I agree with that 100%. Or we should sell take a small parcel that nobody can buy and build on, give half of it to each of the neighbors. Let them pay a little bit of tax on it and take care of it, or put a garden in, because right now it's sitting in the county's name and we don't even mow it. There's one, it's atrocious right now at the corner of 10th and Ohio Street. It's a little pie-shaped piece that you can't build anything on. There's 3 owners. One of them's private, one of them is the Catholic Diocese. They go mow that thing every 10 days, a week. We mow ours every month, maybe. 6 weeks, maybe. And it's not practical for the county highway department to send a guy in with a mower into Michigan City. We could just pay a neighbor $30 to mow the darn thing. How do we figure out how to pay that? Set up some kind of billing system. I think that's something else we have to be concerned with. I'll have within this week, Schultz told me I would have a list of all the properties the county owns within the city limits.
So would that be a commissioner function then, that we would just relinquish all that property, or would that have to come through?
My experience has been, you might want to have a conversation with Ms. Winsky. When she was the auditor, there was some horse trading that went on between Michigan City and the county, and some exchange of property. And it was pretty productive I was county attorney, so this is several years ago. But I know the county and Michigan City have done property exchanges in the past. It's been productive for both.
Well, maybe we can do that, get a list of all the properties together, relinquish them, and throw in the drawbridge while we're at it. What the heck?
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. Any new business?
So just to wrap up, we have 3 members on this commission that are part of the committee. So after we meet the next time, we'll come back here and we'll have a report of where we're at on this for the full commission. And I would also add that these code enforcement efforts, that's crazy. I got 200 plus cases. I've got some of them that I'm working on with the health department that are severe. But you condemn a property, you make somebody homeless, they have nowhere to go. We don't have a county home, we don't have this. So you have those conditions. And then I have my phone and email being blown up because neighbors are fighting with each other and somebody has a snowman on their yard. So
still there, by the way.
So there's a wide range of this, and this is almost like a job for a whole separate department. The success that we have had is because I have 2 employees who go way above and beyond their normal duties of inspector and administrator to also handle code enforcement. And these are not dealings where people are like, thank you so much for everything you've done for me. That's not the response they get. So it's tough. It's tough. We got a lot of cases. We got a lot of areas in the county to clean up, and we certainly want to avoid pristine land, one day and then being sold to somebody else the next day, and all of a sudden 6 cars are there, 8 cars, 10 cars, 12, 14. Now you got a junkyard, leaking fluids and this and that. So these are things that need to be dealt with.
That's what bothered me the most about this one when I was notified. It's an out-of-county owner bringing vehicles from another county to store on a lot in our county, and one of them has a boot on it. He brought to literally have a vehicle over here that's got a boot on it. It's sitting on our property.
Yeah, our neighbor to the west, they have a property maintenance ordinance. And I haven't looked at it for probably 3-4 years, but I remember it was fundable, and it would take care of some of the issues that Mike brought up as far as taking people out of their house and nowhere to go. And my understanding is, and this was way back when your mom was building commissioner, we looked at potentially doing an ordinance, and this one that was brought up, and we kind of looked at it. But it looked like a decent ordinance, and I probably still have it in a folder or something. I could review it again.
You want in on this committee? Have you been getting notices?
Bring him in.
Bring him in.
Yeah, he needs more to do. Jeez.
All right.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Any new business?
I have a question before
Yes.
I'm just looking down. I stated earlier, this case that we dealt with here. I've been following this for a long time. He's running an illegal business in a residential neighborhood. What authority? Who has the authority to stop that? Because I got a feeling, because of what I've known from the neighbors that I know very well, that the activity there will probably continue tomorrow, and probably be worse. And they're all picking a scab here, and something bad's going to happen. But the bottom line is this: who has the authority to stop a business that's running illegally?
We do. And the planning, the zoning code gives us the ability to file for an injunction action, to ask the court to issue an order to stop it immediately.
The problem is if the physical location of the business is actually somewhere else, because there's not a building on there where there's an actual business in it that he's operating from.
Had a mailbox out there.
He does have a mailbox. There's been semis that were parked there, but then they're moved. The majority of what's been going on there is dump trucks and excavating, which I don't have jurisdictional authority over. But that is where the majority of those complaints were coming from. The backup beeping, the noise, the diesel fumes, the engines running, the dust that is created from all of that construction. And so I've issued, 2 stop work orders and a cease and desist order that I sent the sheriff out there with. And I get notified from their attorney, you can't stop them from excavating. I'm like, well, I can stop you from doing everything else. So even when I put a stop to some of what he was doing, he's still running those excavators, and the neighbors are still calling. So it's, that's the situation with that. Maybe the attorney could speak more on stopping, operating the business, but I believe he operates the business at another. There's not the building that's there is like an empty carport that's enclosed. There's nothing in it, so he's not.
When you got a mailbox there for your business, and you got people to show up in their personal vehicle, park it, and go get in his equipment, and they're running stuff in and out the gateway. I mean, to me, what is a business? If that's
what is the name of the business? Because I just did a Secretary of State search in the guy's name, and there was no business listing that popped up.
It's some kind of trucking company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, something trucking, but I don't remember what.
So what brought him here is
I don't think we want to go too far in the discussion on the public record when the board made a decision. I want to try to keep this so we can't appeal every little thing that happens. Okay. Right now, I'm hearing a lot of conjecture. If we have facts on which the plan commission could take an action, great, but I don't think we should engage in conjecture in connection with an individual where action's been taken or might be taken in the future, because I'm not hearing anybody with personal knowledge here. So I would recommend we cease the discussion until such time as we have cold hard facts or action for the plan commission to take.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That sounds that good to me.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.